What will you do to unlock innovation? In today's fast-paced world, innovation might not be enough. Tomorrow's pioneers of change will need to be agile, able to adapt, and committed like never before. Your host, Sana Vinding, invites you to listen in and join business leaders from around the world as they share their visions for success in our future business challenges.
Welcome to Mind Innovation. I'm your host, Sana Vinding. I'm always excited to learn. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about that innovation strategy doesn't need to be complex. We're going to talk about how to create a one-page innovation strategy. I want to welcome Bruno Pešec. He's the president of Pesec Global and helps business leaders increase returns on their investments in innovation. So welcome, Bruno. I'm excited to learn about this one-pager today.
Well, Sana, first, thank you for having me here. And the second, I am excited to share, my experience and insight. And I do hope that at least one person that listens to us today tries it out. That's always my simple aspiration.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's just, if we can help one person, that's the goal for today. But let's learn a little bit about you. So where does your passion from innovation come from?
Well, I have to be honest that ever since I was a little kid, I was a curious and a noisy kid. Not that was really the best for me, but I took that curiosity in my adult age, and I actually started my career as an engineer in defense industry. So I was working, on battle tanks, weapon systems, freight trains, etc. Basically figuring out how to make impossible possible. Now, when I was working on that, what I figured out is that innovation isn't just about technical stuff. It isn't just about the numbers or physics or chemistry or things like that, but it's also about how we humans actually interact with each other, how we interact with, other solutions and technologies and etc. And that is where I really got curious, especially after I had the one big failed project that wasn't failure on technical side, but rather on what I say, the human side. So we had a situation where a customer asked us to come up with the impossible, something that they believed just wasn't physically possible to create. And I was with a team of young engineers, and we were pretty, up in the sky, and we were like, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out. And we pulled no breaks, all the wildest calculations, being on the shop floor, making prototypes that are impossible to mass manufacture. And we made it. And the customer says, no, I will not buy it because I don't believe that's possible. And to me, that was a big learning point, because I was like, hey, innovation obviously isn't just about product development or R&D or things like that. It's also how we talk about value, not just how we create value, but how do we frame it? How do we use the words of other people, etc.? And that was kind of the starting point, the turning point more for me. And basically after that, it was just a roller coaster. I traveled the world, worked in different industries, worked on different products and projects, all whilst figuring out how can actually companies innovate repeatedly. So that was all over the place, but
that's right, because innovation is not a straight path. And that's the same, I think, with your career, right? That it's not a straight path. It is going around in stepping stones, and it takes you different ways. And I think that's the same with innovate, or with strategy of innovation, right? You need leadership, you need the investment, you need a strategy, and you also need to be able to take a risk. So let's jump into this one pager. What are the elements of an innovation strategy, and what does it take, to execute it?
So it's a great question, a bit loaded question, but a great question. So I wanted to take it, element by element.
Okay.
So both innovation and strategy are two words that if you ask 10 people what do they mean, you would get 20 answers.
Yeah.
And what at least in my opinion, I usually say it's not about being the most right person in the room, but actually reaching alignment on the meaning of words. So since we will be talking for half an hour about innovation strategy, I just want to share with you and your audience, what do I think innovation is? As I say, this isn't a test, so I'm not trying to persuade anyone to take my definition, but I want to share mine so that you know what am I actually talking about. And When I say innovation, I go with pretty high level definition. It's something new that creates value. Something new has to be new for the customer and for the innovator, not necessarily to the world, because we are quite creative as a mankind. We have come up with a lot of ideas, and it's quite often that we repeat ourselves because, well, we are not so good at keeping knowledge that we have created, right?
Yeah.
And then other side, value. It's often that we talk about value that's created for the customer. And yes, that must be there. But for innovation, there also must be value for the innovator. Because if there's no value back for the innovator, how can they continue innovating?
Yeah.
If your company is not able to capture back some of the investment in shape of profits or other things, how can they keep innovating? How can they keep running the business? And I know this sounds so obvious, but when we look at the numbers and success rates of companies around the world, more money is wasted on innovation than it is created. Or in other words, there is more value destruction than value creation. And that saddens me. And that's why, back to your previous question, I'm so passionate about innovation, and I'm so happy to be here to at least share this one pager about innovation strategy, because it has one purpose that's most important, and that is to align the organization, to allow it to focus its innovation efforts. Because it's quite often that companies consider innovation just something fun, colorful, get some creatives or get some consultants and let them come up with things.
Yeah.
But that gets you exact same result as it sounds. You are going to get some things, mostly bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And strategy is another word that has so many meanings. Like people say strategy is this, strategy is that. I would almost say that it's easier to say what strategy is not. It's not a to-do list.
Yeah.
It's not an objective. It's not something else. It's not something fluffy.
No.
Like strategy is actually very tangible. And really, again, my take on strategy, or the definition I like, is, strategy is an informed decision about how to win.
Yeah.
Is it the best? Probably not. Some professor might now point finger and say, Bruno, no.
Yeah, what are you doing?
What are you doing? But in essence, it is a set of policies. How are we going to behave in order to accomplish something within that and that? So it's not just a to-do list. It's not just a wish list or something similar. It does provide something tangible. So then when I share with you now a little bit of framing, what's innovation, what's strategy for me, bam, slam them together into innovation strategy. Now, I want to make clear, especially to those that are listening, not every company needs an innovation strategy. If you're a small company, if you're a startup, I would say, screw it. You need your business strategy, because when you're a smaller organization, you usually have either one product line or one service line. You don't have a big collection of value streams that you need to focus. So your business strategy is your product strategy. The companies that can benefit the most from innovation strategy, R&D strategy, and other strategies are larger companies. So the moment you have more than one business unit, the moment you have more than one P&L statement, that is when you can really derive value from having comprehensive innovation strategy and others, because they will provide horizontal alignment across the organization for your value creation activities. Oh my God, this sounded like consultant speak. I need to drop those words. Okay, but back to your question. So you asked me, what are the most important elements?
What are
if you imagine one page, be it letter size, A4, or even a big whiteboard, and you imagine that you just draw two horizontal lines, so you end up with 3 bars. And then in the far left is what you would write in is what is our innovation ambition and what are our innovation targets. Then in the middle column, you would write what's our avoidance policy? What are the things that we will not do? And then in the far right column, you would write investment policy. What are the things that we will put money, people, and resources to? And Senna, at any moment you just stop me and drop a question or whatever, because I'll just keep going.
You'll just keep going. No, that's okay. So, no, but so then I will stop you and say, what about the risk? Do you put that on it, or where will that live on this document?
That's a very good question. So that will be considered in, these are the things we will not do.
Okay.
Either because of the risk or because it's not aligned with overall business strategy, etc. And risk is very important for the innovation, and that is something that innovation teams always need to address.
Yeah.
So I would especially put it, innovation risk is managed through actually innovation management systems, not necessarily the strategy itself. Because the most important, if you think about a strategy as a focus point, where it will be addressed is by defining the boundaries. That is what the strategy document should do. It should give every employee a clear idea, oh, this is my playground, these are the boundaries to my playground, this is where I can push and be creative, and this is where I cannot push the boundary, but I still have to be creative. So let me give you an example.
Awesome. Yeah.
In these are the things we would not do. So I wouldn't just write it at a high level, but we can actually think at 3 different levels. One is, these are the opportunities we will not explore. So you would say, let's imagine some company. Let's imagine a financial service company. And let's say that that you say, we are a company that's focused primarily on B2B, and in B2C, we only want to offer consumer loans. Okay, good. And then you might decide that because you're a financial institution, you don't want to take customers of specific risk profile. So you could say, we will not explore opportunities for new products that cater to customers of such and such profile.
Yeah.
Simple. I just shared this example. It sounds so obvious, but I cannot tell you how many sessions I had where people just blankly stare and, well, I mean, why would we put anything on a no list? Who knows? Maybe we will miss out on a big opportunity. Well, no, for one simple reason. If it's good, it will come back again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can open it up and find out where it should be, if it should still stay, right, in that out of scope, what I will call it. But yeah.
Exactly. Because something might be out of scope, but if it keeps returning, then you can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because that is one thing that also differentiates innovation strategy from other strategy documents. It's much more livelier. Like, you're not supposed to revise it every day, but you're also not supposed to revise it every 3 years.
Yeah.
You should revisit it for a larger company, usually around a quarter.
Okay.
And those aren't really big revisions. Those are mostly like, hey, if you think about innovation strategy as a filter for ideas that are good for our company, is the filter working? If not, let's talk again. If yes, well, see you in 3 months then. So one level would be opportunities that we will not explore. But then let's say that, hey, this is an interesting opportunity. What is then the next no level? Well, the next no level is the type of business that you don't want to build. For example, if you're a financial institution and you decided, hey, any new business model, we don't want it to include physical chains. We don't want it to include retail and physical locations. So you would put that on a no list. So you decided we want to be digital. Prove it. Put on a no list things that will, prevent going in that direction.
Yeah.
And then the final one could be, we will not invest in technologies like. So you see, we are building from opportunity to business model to technology, because you can also define the type of technologies you do not want to invest in. Yeah. And here you don't have to write specific name of technology, but you asked about the risk. You could write here, we will not invest in technologies that haven't been in use for at least 3 years. That is how you reduce risk. Yeah. Or we will not use technologies that are provided from startups, for example. Now, I love startups, but it is a certain risk to take an important piece of technology and use it in your own value chain. So these are the things that you could put in a no list that helps you manage your risk, but also helps you focus your employees, focus their creativity, focus their work, focus their value creation efforts, and magic happens.
So I want to ask you something else then, because with innovation, right, it's also exploring the unknown and then get ideas from there, or find out what works, what doesn't work. So where does this fit in? Is that you have your innovation strategy first, and then this opens up to say, okay, we still need to go in and research or find out this unknown, and then you go back and revise it? Or do you have some sessions before where you actually go in and saying, let's discuss and some of this unknown before we can define an innovation strategy?
Yes, so unknown can still be focused even when we go into the unknown, and that is actually a common, well, I would say a common challenge in my experience with larger companies, is they want the unknown but they don't bound it off. So that way, will a financial company start producing ice creams? Probably not. No. But if we don't put some smaller boundaries, people really might come up with a lot of different things. And that is why I usually separate these two things, because, as I said, I like to think about innovation strategy as a filter and the playground defining thing, because when you have that, then you can go into the unknown as much as you want. Within our industry, within these specific parameters. And the thing is, I would like to connect it to a great paper I read. I cannot remember exactly the name of the paper, but it was about kids playing. So they had two groups of kids playing. To one group, they defined the boundaries of the playground. They said, hey, this is where the playground ends. Please remain within the boundaries. And to the other group of kids, they said, there is no boundaries. World is your playground. And most fascinating thing happened. The kids that had defined boundaries actually explored the whole playground compared to the kids that had no boundaries. The kids that had no boundaries actually explored much less of the playground because they felt safer to be closer to each other. Because there was no defined boundaries. They were actually afraid to separate from the group. And to me, that's just fascinating. And it really works quite well in innovation as well. Because if there's absolutely no boundaries, you might come up. Exactly. you might come up with some ideas that are good, but might not be good for your organization. And let me give you an example. So one big company in Europe, they were investing millions and hundreds of millions actually in innovation. Many innovation teams working for years, etc. And one innovation team, after several years, they built a business of 40 million euros annual recurring revenue. That's a great number for a startup. For that big company, it isn't even a blip on their financial performance. So that team did the good work. It's not like they did bad work. But in terms of success for that company, it wasn't relevant. And that's why we have innovation strategy, things like that, to focus our employees to actually create things that the organization can get value from, not just the customer. And that's also what it's so difficult to innovate. Innovation is one of those things that it doesn't matter how skilled you are, the outcome is still uncertain. So if you got the best innovators in a room, they couldn't guarantee successful outcome. They would give their best, and there's higher probability that something good would come out of it, but there's no guarantee. So you have that situation that you cannot influence too much. And then if you fail to provide actually boundaries for innovation in your organization, and you fail to provide an innovation system, you have such low probability of succeeding that you're better off not even spending money on innovation. And that sounds horrible.
No. What about, so using this one pager as a communication tool, what are your experience there? Is it a lot of success, or does it take, with any change, right? I think in any company, it always takes time. But what is your experience as using it as a communication tool?
So as a communication tool, it works really great. Employees usually find it quite illuminating, not in a sense that, wow, this is completely new to them, because if they've been working in an organization for some time, they should be relatively aligned. But where the penny starts to drop is, remember how I introduced what is innovation and strategy to me. That often happens with strategic objectives in a company, because someone says, oh, that's what it actually means. I thought it meant the other thing.
Yeah.
So that actually, this process actually forces you to put that, because it's on a one page. You cannot write essays of 7 pages explaining, we have decided to take a leading position in this market and delight our customers and blah, 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 blah. You know, you just have a bullet point, and you just have like, this is what we believe in. You know, these are the things that we will allow you to do or invest in. These are the things that we want. And it's so illuminating. The process to get to this one pager actually doesn't start with one page and putting in the answers, but by asking critical questions. And I usually work through a list of 9 critical questions, and I can share them here, but we don't have enough time to cover everything. But what I like to say is, like, this one pager is culmination of your understanding. It's not set in stone. So it's tested in the marketplace and with your employees as well. Your employees are the first line. So the strategy shouldn't be separate from your organization. So usually this strategy is created by a group of managers with a few employees, and then it's shared with the bigger part of the company. And they will be the first one to say, this doesn't make sense, and give you feedback. So revise
but you open up that dialogue, right? So then you can define it much better.
Exactly. So the questions that I offer that are very helpful to actually define those 3 groups are, start with a very simple question of, what is your business actually? And I know this sounds ridiculous, but again, I cannot tell you how many clients I work with that when I would ask them, what is your business? And they would be, and then they would start explaining, and by the moment they finish explaining, they would change their story, because they had to hear themselves in order to correct. And a simple example here was a company that was making heaters, like for heating water. And most of the people were saying, we're in the business of making heaters. Okay, how is value created? Well, customer buys heaters, we install it into the house, and then one guy was, no, our business is about providing heating manuals to foremen, because nobody goes and buys our heaters because of themselves. Everybody buys the heater because the handyman told them to buy our heater. You know, it's just a small thing, but that is your first question. What is our business? Can we really put it down? Can we map it out? When we can, then start looking, okay, what parts of our business are under pressure? And I say under pressure because a lot of people like using burning platform, but most of the larger companies don't have a burning platform. They're doing really well despite their crappy innovation practices. so you can't ask them, you know, what's your burning platform?
No.
Instead, take a look, you know, at the product lines that have decreasing margins, that have increased pressure from disruption, that have increased pressure from new market entrants, etc. And then start expanding. So we had a question, what's your business? What's under pressure? And now, how is the world changing? And I like asking, how is the world changing, instead of ecosystem or regulators or etc. Because companies are more than just a business. You have human communities, social communities, ecological communities, regulations, lawmakers, governance, so many things. So you have to be aware of how is the world around you changing. And then moving to like following up on these 3 questions is a simple one again. What might these changes bring? Now, this is, I love this formulation, what might it bring, because it allows you to be creative even for people that feel they are not creative. They don't even realize they're being creative while answering that question, because this is all about fantasy, about thinking, about, now is happening A, B, and C. That means that D could happen a few years from now. And I love that moment because, as I told you, people that feel that they're not creative at all, they start coming up with these
it
amazing
sparks
stories.
these ideas, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So who should
exactly.
sit? Yeah, who should sit and then formula or create this one pager? Who are the key people, and is that a process as well?
Yeah. So it's always a process, as you know, Senna. everything is a process. What I would suggest here, in ideal state, is something that I call vertical slice of the organization.
Yeah.
So let's say that you decide to focus on a specific business unit or business area. So have few people from the top management, few people from the middle management, and few people from the frontline operations, etc. It actually shouldn't be like, you're not looking at assembling 100 people. You're looking at assembling 12, 13 people with different takes on your business and the world around you. What's important here, I want to stress cognitive diversity. That's really important. What I mean by that are people that think differently and have different experiences. That's really useful if you have a facilitator that will help you, have respectful conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to end up with a dynamic where everybody just sits there and waits for the big boss to finish their presentation and what they think. This is the future. This is the business in the future. Please go and innovate, please. So having a group like that is a good starting point, and then working through some questions. I will actually share with you a small guide I've written, and then you can, whoever is listening, you can reach out to Senna, and she will be happy to share it.
Okay, that would be awesome. Yeah.
So that is, I really like this concept of a vertical slice, because I think it's really important. That way you avoid this effect of the ivory tower. People from the top just imagining with their crystal balls, this is the future, please execute on it.
Yeah. No. Will you bring in, because I just learned about the what you can say negative brainstorming. I've never heard that, but I just learned that a few weeks ago. I was like, what is that? I had to Google it. So is that something, it's where you think about problems that you have, right? And how it can be solved. But you don't come up with solutions. It's you're bringing up the problems. What can go wrong, right? Because then again, that can feed into being innovative. Have you seen that in this, using for the one pager, or is this just me coming in saying, hey, I read this last week? Can you use it?
I use something similar. I didn't know it's called negative brainstorming, so that is probably another name for it. I cannot remember. It was from one of the Japanese authors from the 70s or 80s. He didn't call it a negative brainstorming, but it was something like negative what if, or not negative, but opposite what if, something like that. So in the middle, you would put on the middle of the wall, you would put some objective or something. And then you would write around it, why can't you make that? What's preventing you from achieving that? And and then you actually end up with things like, if we can fix all of those things, then we can achieve the thing we have put in the middle. So I think that's very similar, right?
It sounds it's very similar. Yeah, it's very similar. But it's looking ahead to say why, what will go wrong if we're looking going forward.
Exactly.
Because you can then it opens up a dialogue that everybody can say, hey, no, either say, I don't believe it, or this will go wrong, right? Instead of working on something for 3 weeks, and then a person will say, no, that's not possible due to this. And it was like, we could have had that conversation up earlier, and then we could have made a decision and either go in that direction or change the direction.
So that is, I completely agree with that. And what you just said, Senna, I want to draw all the listeners' attention is that is a very powerful technique for questioning any assumption. And really, strategy is an assumption. It is an educated guess. So you can take any strategy document, be it one page or whatever you're using in your organization, and start that same process. Why wouldn't this work? And this isn't about being negative. And that's why it's important to have a really good and healthy culture in your organization. Like, you need to be able to have I don't want to say destructive, or we could call it, you need to be able to have generative destructive conversations.
Yeah.
Meaning you should be able to critique things
Be nice
without
to each other. No.
insulting each other. Yes, yes.
Positive critical thinking. No. No. Okay, no, that's good. Yeah, no, I haven't used. I think I have used it, but I haven't used the word saying negative brainstorming. And using just the word negative is also giving you feelings, right? What is this about? But I definitely want to use the word and then get the conversation going. It's something I really want to try. What about companies? Because I think if you look out and say, oh, this company is so innovative, right? Bringing up if it's a service, if it's products, cool, then you're like, oh, we should be like them. And you can look at their, as much as you, of course, can see into their learnings. But there's also companies that fails. And they have, I'm sure, great learnings, right? Because every week I fail with something and I learn from it. And then I just see if it's my process, or I change my method, or I do something else, or I need to get some more knowledge, and then I improve. So what have you seen when you work with clients? Do you shine the example of saying this is the best of the class, you should do that, right? Or do you say, hey, look at these company that failed, and then you teach, or you find out the learnings? What's the best approach? And I know maybe it's a balance, but I have to ask you anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit biased here. So I'm definitely more in the camp of let's study failures instead of great successes. And one of the reasons is there is something called survivor bias. So when aeroplane investigators were investigating aeroplane crashes and people that survive versus those that don't, they actually realized that it was, or what they learned was that it wasn't important how physically fit a passenger was. That had no correlation with surviving the plane crash.
Yeah.
What had correlation was if they tried to get their luggage. Everybody who tried to get their luggage before they left the airplane, unfortunately, perished in the disaster.
Yeah.
So that is why you often hear that message. But the point was they would never learn that if they were focusing only on those that survived. They started studying, okay, what did those that unfortunately didn't had in common?
Yeah.
And I take the same approach to businesses. Really, it's not important what Alphabet, Google, Amazon, Apple, what are they doing? Yeah, it's cool. But what's most important is, like, what do all the companies that went bankrupt or had to close their offices or whatever because of their innovation investments, what did they have in common?
Yeah.
And let's avoid that, because as we said in the beginning, innovation is one of those things that have no guaranteed outcomes. The only thing you can control, since you can't control the outcome, is how much you invest and how you work with innovation. Yeah. So these two things every company can control. Therefore, let's not repeat silly mistakes from others. I did distill some of the most expensive mistakes. Again, happy to share that, the link and everything, but I'll focus on a few that really are silent killers in large organizations. Yeah. One of them are people investing in thoughts instead of ideas. A thought is something you have when you're showering, but it's not investable. When you're able to write it down and say, who is it for and what is it about, then you have an idea that you can, pitch or consider putting a team or something else. Because if you just have an unfinished thought and you share it with your employees, and then I spend 2 weeks trying to figure out what did you think, you just wasted 80 work hours for one person. And if you had a team of 3, what was it? 240 hours, bam, to the wind.
Out of the door,
Because exactly. And then continuing on that is actually, again, these are all pretty much large companies' problems, but it happens in SMEs as well, is you have an idea and you decide to invest in it, but it's an orphan idea. It's not associated with a specific team, with a specific group of people, because ideas don't get executed out of thin air. It is people like you and me that actually bring ideas to life. And that is so important in innovation, because innovation is much more personal. Yeah. If it's just, having a to-do list of wash the office, deliver the product, anyone can do that. Innovation can be done by anyone, but it is so painful because you have so much ups and downs, and it's emotionally difficult and challenging, and sometimes you just don't see a way forward. So it's very important that there is specific Bruno or Senna assigned to specific idea. Ideally, they are the people who propose the idea, because they would like to suffer the most to see it come to life. And again, now when we're talking, this sounds so obvious, but I cannot tell you how many ideas I've seen where companies would invest 10, $100 million, euros, etc., and say, this is what we're going to do. And you ask, okay, who's accountable for that idea? Who is actually supposed to execute on that idea? Oh, it's in that domain. Yes, but is it Bruno? Is it Senna? Is it Joe? Is it Paul? Who is working on this? And another big silent killer is what I mentioned earlier with the example. A team that's working on a project that actually is profitable, but is not of an appropriate size for the organization. So it's these three aren't the only ones, but there are three that can easily be fixed. You hear about them, and you fix them. You don't need to spend 10 years and consultants and I don't know what not, or send your people to the prestigious university to learn more about innovation. You hear about it and you're like, oh, yeah, we really shouldn't do this. And then you don't do it.
That's the way. Okay. What will you tell Bruno 10 years ago? Now that you're wiser and you have been through success and failures, looking back, what will you tell yourself?
Okay. What I would advise Bruno, looking 10 years younger, is I have to admit, and I did share a bit about that in writing and so on, is I had to work a lot on how I communicate with people. I told you I'm an engineer, that's where I came from, and to me, I say how it is, or I think I say how it is. So back in the day, people would come with ideas and I would say, well, this is really stupid idea. Like, why are you wasting my time on this?
Kill it.
I can see this will not work. Like, you don't even need to finish presenting. I can see it won't work. And I might have been technically right, but I was not respectful. And my intention wasn't to harm. My intention was just to communicate what I know. And what I would advise to younger me is, Bruno, it's not just how you see the world. Try to be in other people's shoes as well. Try to understand and always be respectful. Like when someone brings forward their opinion or thought or an idea, take it with care and give your honest feedback, but with care and with kindness. And that is the biggest advice I would have given to myself 10 years ago. It would save a lot of grief.
Yeah. That's a good one. No, you have to understand the world, right? That's a good one. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm excited, just to see your passion about innovation and everything here. It just makes me excited as well. I'll make sure, to get the links from you. So I'll put that in the notes for the podcast so we can share that. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. And thank you again, Senna.
If you enjoy this podcast, maybe you'd like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure also to check out our website, mindtheinnovation.com. And remember, stay curious and keep learning.